as per introduction, we will share with you some information from the background to our School of Pharmacy in Malta, developments in clinical pharmacy, and some innovations with respect to our teaching programs. History about our institution. The College of Pharmacy forms part of the Faculty of Medicine and Surgery at the University of Malta, and we have a historical tradition of over 300 years. The School of Pharmacy was set up during the times of the Knights of St. John in Valletta, and that is where our roots of a School of Pharmacy in Malta go back to. The programs offered from our department include undergraduate programs. We have 2 undergraduate programs looking at pharmaceutical technology, a 3-year program for pharmaceutical technology, and a program leading to a degree in pharmacy. With regards to the pharmaceutical technology course, it's a 3-year Bachelor of Science degree program with a focus on graduates or students who would like to develop their career in pharmaceutical processes. So within the program, students are exposed to the technology and processing of development, manufacture, and handling of medicines and medical devices. There are exercises in the program to lead the student to develop a critical analytical approach to looking at these processes, identifying critical areas, establishing risks, and also to look at systems that relate to quality control and quality assurance in the manufacture and compounding of medicines. For the pharmacy degree program, the program is split into 2 parts. We have the first 4 years, which lead to a Bachelor of Science degree program. This is the system that's very commonly adopted in Europe. And in the first 4 years, the students are exposed to basic sciences as well as clinical pharmacy and pharmacy practice areas. The last 3 semesters, the second part of the program, are dedicated to pharmacy practice and practice research, and the students completing the 2 cycles, both the Bachelor of Science in Pharmaceutical Sciences and the Master of Pharmacy program, will then be eligible to apply for a license to practice pharmacy in Malta and in other European countries. So this is a snapshot of the first the 2 levels. We have the Master of Pharmacy program, which is considered to be a level 7 degree. Students completing that program can enter into the profession and practice as a pharmacist. Then they then have options to further also their academic degree by either taking up a Master of Science in Pharmacy with specific specialities in either industrial pharmacy, pharmacoeconomics, or clinical pharmacy, or they may opt to move on to higher level degrees, what is known in the academic parts as a level 8 degree, either through a PhD, Doctor of Philosophy, or through a professional doctorate, the Doctorate in Pharmacy program, which focuses more on the clinical pharmacy part and the pharmaceutical regulatory sciences. Why clinical pharmacy? We go back to the initial stages of clinical pharmacy in the United States, and this is a statement taken from Gloria Franchi, one of the leaders in the area of clinical pharmacy, who way back in 1969 had put this very dramatic but very useful statement that clinical pharmacy is one of the changes for pharmacy that has impacted on the way that that will impact at the time on the way that pharmacy education and pharmacy practice will be led. In Malta, we had close links with these people who were leading these changes. In fact, Gloria Franchi worked closely with our research group at the time and also visited Malta a number of times during the development of clinical pharmacy. What is happening in Europe? If we look at pharmacy programs in Europe, this is a snapshot of how different topics in the curricula were split in 1994. And you can see that the majority of the courses in a pharmacy program in 1994 were dedicated to chemistry and biological sciences, with biological sciences looking at physiology and biochemistry predominantly. Clinical pharmacy and pharmacy practice are classified in the medical sciences section, which at the time was accounted for about between a range of 11 to 30% of the curriculum in the different schools of pharmacy in Europe. What happened within 20 years? This is the same exercise undertaken by the European Association of Faculties of Pharmacy in 2006, and now we can see a change in that the percentage curriculum of the different schools of pharmacy in Europe is now reflecting that we have courses that are more taking into account the medical sciences, the pharmacy practice and clinical pharmacy parts in terms of percentage in the curriculum. Specifically to different to countries, for taking, for example, Malta, which is the School of Pharmacy which I represent, we can see that the medical sciences part, the chemistry ratio is of about 2%, and 2 is of a factor of 2. And the reason why this is very important is because if you look at what our graduates do when they complete their studies, we have 45% of the students when they finish their program going into a community pharmacy. And the structure in Malta is that in the community pharmacy sector, the pharmacist is in direct contact with patients and doing a number of clinical pharmacy interventions, particularly for chronic disease management. And another 20% are participating in hospital pharmacies, where in Malta we have clinical pharmacists practicing on wards, participating together with the medical team and looking at therapeutic decisions and monitoring patients. So what the clinical pharmacy programs and the innovations in education are is to equip students to put the patient as the center of care, but also to be a proactive member of the team approach, therefore working in partnership with the other people, the other healthcare professionals in the group. And how did we approach these innovations in our teaching programs? These are some examples. For example, we do hold a series of courses and discussion programs looking at clinical pharmacy bedside teaching. We do a lot of bedside teaching, having the students with the pharmacist mentor, with the other healthcare professionals to look at individual patient cases and learn clinical pharmacy skills during this experience. In the program, the idea, the focus is that you have graduates who are being put into the pharmacy scene, but the pharmacy scene will change in a number of years. So you need to equip the students with the skills to think, mobilize the knowledge that will change as developments in medications keep coming up, communicating with other people in the team, and applying the science of pharmacy with the practice and the application to benefit the patient. So the outcome is that we would like to have, we are putting forward programs to mobilize critical thinking in the students and to develop active, self-directed lifelong learners. Because as you know, when we are working today, we have the medicines that we have today, but we're also going to have these graduates looking into the future. Another example of innovations in clinical pharmacy is by running experiential learning modules that will run both for the undergraduate and also for the doctorate of pharmacy program, the postgraduate program, whereby students are taking up experiences in real life activities. So the students are actually participating and practicing in different clinical scenarios, in the wards, in the hospital, and therefore having real hand experience and discussing the patient cases with the other people in the group. Examples of active learning: for example, we do have activities where the students are asked to keep a student portfolio. At the beginning of the practice session on the clinical part, they are asked to reflect on what they think they can achieve during this learning experience. And therefore, they put down objectives of this activity and what they want to learn and improve. Halfway through the placement, the students get into a discussion to reflect, are these objectives being met, or can we change, or should I change these objectives? How could I approach better the placement? So the students are given skills to also manage their own experience in the clinical part. Other examples of innovations in the teaching models include what we refer to as the flipped classroom, where students have access to recorded lectures and lecture notes on through the computer systems. They go through the material and then come into the practice, into the research, into the tutorial with the practitioners and the research group to discuss what they have learned and discuss cases, patient cases. This is the system that we adopt for the Doctorate of Pharmacy program, for example, where students go through information, for example, knowledge about diabetes and the use of drugs, and then they have a tutorial where they will discuss patient cases with management of, in the management of diabetes. Applied practice research projects. Students start working on their practice research project in the second year during the pharmacy program, and in the doctoral program, the postgraduate program, the students are taking up PhD level research projects in clinical pharmacy. Some examples of these practice research projects. This is an example of a project that we are running with the cardiology department in our general hospital for looking at the application of having a pharmacist leading the point-of-care test genotyping to individualize the use of clopidogrel in patients who have suffered a myocardial infarction and are undergoing a PCI, and therefore have stents attached in the system. And there are studies which indicate that patients who do not metabolize clopidogrel could be exposed to a higher risk of stent thrombosis. Actually, the latest results that we have from this study, which are being published in the next few months, indicate that by genotyping and identifying these patients, you can even also reduce the risk of patients who are exposed to restenosis, meaning that you have the stent which gets blocked, and therefore the patient can have another cardiac event, which could also lead to death. So these are the type of research studies that are undertaken at the doctoral level, whereby we are identifying new practice and clinical pharmacy activities, and also supporting the development of new pharmaceutical services in the hospitals. Another example of research work is the development of quality systems for clinical pharmacy services in the hospital. This is a system that was developed for one of our local hospitals, whereby one is standardizing activities that clinical pharmacists are doing in the hospitals, looking at what activity should one be looking at, for example, when a patient is admitted into the hospital, or when a patient is being discharged. What are the standards of practice in terms of patient education on discharge medication? And this system was actually cited by ACCP as one of the examples of how clinical pharmacy can be implemented in new areas. So looking at the Doctorate of Pharmacy program, which we run with the University of Illinois in Chicago, we are looking at developing interprofessional learning. So our students have interprofessional activities on the wards and in community pharmacies. We develop journal clubs to review evidence literature and have the students prepare reflective portfolios to identify their learning activity and to develop a lifelong learning approach to aspects of pharmacy. The outcome is that one is looking at pharmacists who are taking a postgraduate degree, taking a level 8 postgraduate academic degree, whilst at the same time developing further advanced clinical pharmacy skills so as to have these pharmacists ready to take up care manager positions, leadership roles, to develop clinical pharmacy services in their own institution and in their own country. This is an international program, so the students, the pharmacists joining these programs are coming from different countries, and that in itself enriches the discussion that comes in during these reflective care patient case discussions. So students are participating in different sessions to...
Two minutes.
Thank you. To look at medication knowledge, reducing errors, patient errors due to medication risks, and to support decision-making in terms of drug therapy based on evidence-based sources. To develop skills on critically analyzing relevant data in patient files, for example, and look at pharmacovigilance aspects in terms of monitoring the use of medicines, the safe use of medicines, and identifying opportunities for improvement of medication use systems and the development of novel, new direct patient care services, such as new outpatient clinics where the pharmacist could be playing an important role in supporting the patient in terms of medication use. So that was an overview of our different programs and the way that the target of achieving advanced clinical pharmacy skills at a postgraduate level is being achieved. I would just like to leave you with an insight into our historical heritage for Malta, where there are documents in our historical records that clinical pharmacy services were actually practiced in 1500s in the hospital, which is nowadays used as a conference center in Valletta, because Malta was, at the time, had a big hospital for, since we had the Knights of St. John, they were hospitalers, so hospital services were one of the focal points of the island. And pharmacists had to join physicians on the ward rounds to discuss patient care. So this is a historical insight of an example of clinical pharmacy in the medieval times. Thank you very much.